Welcome to Beyond the Press Release, a production of Gore.com, which we take the time to speak with small cap executives right after they put out more news. Guess who's back? Bernard, Chairman, CEO, HPQ Silicon, trades on the venture under HPQ. He hasn't been back in a whole 15 days or something like that. So we're wondering where he went. But for those who knew the story,
15 trading days. Yeah,
15 trading days.
I know it's
Did
long.
you find the on button? Did you find the on button?
Nah, as I told you, I didn't find the on button. I find the mute button.
For those of you who are new to the story, we know it's going to be a lot of you because look, we're doing this on Thursday just for the close, and there's like 8.5 million shares traded or something. So we know there's a lot of new audience here. So for those of you who knew, HPQ is a Canadian producer, and they're of innovative silicon solutions, and they're building a portfolio, literally, of unique, high-value specialty silicon products that are needed for the renewable energy race, and they're doing it with two world-renowned technology partners. More than just lip service, HPQ Nano received its first order for spherical nano silicon material from a major auto manufacturer, and they've got an NDA with at least two players in the space that we know of, and Bernard's kind of hinted that maybe more. So today's press release, HPQ Gen1 Nano Silicon Reactor exceeds expectations, produces sub 100 nanometer spherical nanopowder and nanowires. Bernard, welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks. I know it's been long. 15 trading days since the last time I issued a press release. Oh my God.
Well, you kept us all on in suspense, yeah. So we're glad you came out of your hibernation cape. All kidding aside, though, there are going to be new people on here. Okay.
Yep.
Before we get into the press release, explain to them in just layman's terms a minute. What's the importance? What the hell is spherical nanopowder and spherical, silicon spherical nanopowders and nanowires? Why are those important? Why should we care?
Okay, let's go one step forward. Silicone is a much better material than graphite at allowing charging batteries. So it's looking to be used in battery area. When you do a battery, it's basically you squish the material, roll into it. So the sphericality is the fact that you can better compact it. It's the same thing with spherical titanium powder that Pyro developed and everything else. When you have a material spherical, it's easier to compress, pack into it. Okay. So that's one of the key advantages of doing it spherical. The other thing is silicone, I won't get into too much of it, but fundamentally, it's a much better product to do batteries, okay, to do anodes for batteries than graphite. It has a better capacity to retain energy, and it charges faster. You cannot have a fast charging batteries without having silicone into it. The counterpoint of it, and why what we're doing is so important, is that silicone does have a few drawbacks. That's why it's not yet readily available in the battery space. One of them is the fact that it expands and contracts as it goes through different charging cycles. What the literature and the science has demonstrated is yet you need very, very small, very, very small particles of silicone to offset the problem, or you have to have, or you need porous silicone into it. The threshold seems to be 150 nanometers or smaller. Okay, but that's, to be totally honest, I've spoken to so many battery manufacturers that everyone has their own recipe and everyone can deal balances on and off. All right, but that's why we advertised historically that our goal was to make something between 200 nanometers to 5 microns. The reason why is, from our discussion with industry participants, we figured out that's where the market was. So
and
in a nutshell, just for the battery application, that's what I'm talking about. I could blabber on many other applications, but we'll just keep it for batteries today.
And Tesla Tesla supports that, validates that, obviously, with what they said on Battery Day. If you can maybe just
well, basically, what happened really to silicone is the following: it left the white codes of the labs, okay, to enter the public domain as the next in thing with regard to batteries, either in a pure form alone or in a graphite combined form. Okay. What happened in Battery Days is it became prime time. The advantage of HPQ is that we've been involved for 6 years in this space, in this material, and we control through our different technologies, different things that position us really unique. So when we say we have innovative silicone solution, we're not joking. Fundamentally, historically, all the materials to make to make nanoparticles of silicon are very, very expensive. That's why it sells right now for $20,000 more a kilogram. Yeah, but that's not a price that the battery manufacturers are willing to pay. They've clearly said it out publicly. They're not willing to pay more than what graphite is costing them presently. Even though there's more advantage using material, they're very stuck on
and
that.
that's where you guys make all the difference, because together with Pyro, you're able to produce at a costs that are lower than all the traditional makers of silicon, correct?
Yeah, when we started this nano reactor project, which we're talking about the positive result today, from the get-go, we understood the dynamics of the market. Okay, we understood the material we're looking to replace. We understood the bell curve, or the curve that goes on at the development curve. All right, so at the beginning, the prices are crazy, and then they go crashing down. So and everybody tries to bet what's going to be the right price, and then they always get it wrong. So from the beginning, I sort of figured out, let's make sure that from the get-go, we're always going to be the lowest cost producer. And I strongly believe that we're developing a strategy to implement this. Why? Well, one reason. Whichever silicone solution out there ends up winning, okay, it starts with what's known as silicon metal, which is the first transformation of quartz to silicon metal. That was our first technology we've developed. We've developed a much more efficient process to do it, to do the higher purity, like 4N purity in one step, much cheaper, much more compact, and everything else, so smaller capex. So the entrance of everybody else in the industry, okay, is going to be more expensive than our own internal. That's already one thing we control. Second of all, we're working with pyrogenesis. They have 25 years of experience in spherical nanopowder, in metallic powders. Okay, so it's not something that's out of the blue. So when you bring all those strengths together, what we're developing, you get the type of result we published today.
So now let's move on to your quote, because that's where you say something kind of profound there, and it's in the headline too. But with the Gen1 PUREVAP now operational and exceeding expectations from the start, that's the part I want to talk about. HPQ is now uniquely positioned to be at the forefront of low-cost manufacture of nano silicon for batteries and other applications. I mean, that's a pretty bold statement. But first, let's talk about the fact that the reactor is exceeding expectation from the start. I'm sure shareholders are going to be happy to hear that. How do you feel about that? Were you pleasantly surprised? Were you expecting that? And how important it is right off the bat to be exceeding your expectations during the commissioning phase?
To be totally honest, the first commissioning test, the goal was to produce, around it. Basically, the goal was to say, can we really make the 200 nanometers that we advertise? Okay, so because, making it smaller is more difficult than making it bigger. So we might as well get from the beginning, figure out how to do it, the hardest part, and then move on. So everything was designed to do 200 nanometers, and we realized it worked better than we thought, and we produced the sub 100 nanometers, which is very, very exciting because it opens up different market in addition to battery space too. So that's you can't beat that, because the reality is commissioning tests are there's always problems because it's normal. It's just the first time you turn the machine. We're overly up. For us, non-engineer, non-scientist, not PhD. You figure you turn on the machine, you put the on button, and you get the material. It's an overly simplified perspective, but
say the least.
You turn the machine, turn 4 cranks, and get everything going. I shouldn't say that. I said that once, and people said something. But fundamentally, that's what it is. So we're now at that phase, which I find the most exciting, which is, okay, we started, the machine works, the process works, the concept works. We did better than we thought. Okay, let's figure it out now. How are we going to, fine tune it to perfection, and as we do this, we'll be ready to scale it up. We're already thinking scaling it up. So this is why if we have done 200 nanometers, I would have been very happy. People have to realize that the picture we did at the proof of concept were 500 nanometers. Okay. So
that's the one that led to the phone ringing, because
that's the one that led to the phone. It was 500 nanometers. An average of 500 nanometers. So, some bigger, some smaller, but it's basically an average of 500 nanometers. And the industry and the literature and the scientists we're talking about, you need below 150 nanometers. So you have to realize that going from 500 nanometers to 200 nanometers is a massive freaking jump. Okay. So we put the bar pretty high and we went, okay. So now we got to work the other way around, which is fine. But now, you know, as everything else, the machine doesn't blow up the first 2 times we try it. We're a good start. That's why it's called R&D, research and destroy. Not my job, but somebody a part of it.
Let's talk about the order from the global auto manufacturer that was announced in November, December.
Yeah.
Are you with this run? Are you able to fill that pre-order?
No, and we said it in press release. And fundamentally, the reason is pretty simple. You know, everybody has their own specification what they're looking for. It's the first test, so it's not the optimum. You know, I'll go back to Peter's quote. It says, "We're looking to produce qualified samples." Okay, those are our first material. They're not going to be our best material. I'm not going to send not my best material. But this being said, now that we got the machine working, now it's working the way it is. It's going to move ahead. It's perfect. The key point is, to start the testing process, we had to figure out what's the minimum barrier the system has to do. We had to deal that with first because that's the biggest hurdle. Okay, that's literally the biggest issue. Making it smaller is more difficult.
Yeah, right? Everything. I mean,
everything is more difficult. So our low-cost processor, which we've designed, has made that size material. So the implications are massive in other areas. So we're pretty excited about that. Now it's just a question of fine-tuning the machine, getting it to work a bit better. And then we'll produce it. So it's going to be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I don't care. I'm not giving out delay. I'll come into it because the machine works. It's as simple as that. Because the process works, the machine works, and the guys at Pyrogenesis, I've worked with them for so many years. I understand how the R&D process works. This is why I took some time in a press release to explain what differentiates us from everybody else. The idea is, when you're working at this level, you try to figure out all the science about all the control and everything else at a scale that, you know, basically people can play with and understand. Then you gradually scale it up, and then you figure out what's the problem with scaling up. But if you do control scaling up, there's no really big issue. So having this size of machine for us, the feedback loop is very, very quick. We do the test, we analyze the material, we figure it out. Okay, we do this improvement, and we do another test, we figure it out. So, you know, at one point, you know, right now, we run a series of tests, and we have to readjust the machine, fiddle around, figure out a few things. We're restarting new tests. We're going to probably do a test a week, and then once it's going to get better, we'll go about two tests a week, maybe 3 tests a week, and bang, and go. So
it's only going to get better. It's
of course the key point has to understand is we set the bar here, and we figured out we wanted to work with that, and we went here, 100 nanometers. It's sub 100 nanometers.
You don't get very excited. Like you got some big smiles. You're excited. You're happy. You don't. So is this one of those few times where you were, you know, clearly really happy about the fact that you're able to go sub 100 nanometers? It seems like it's a big deal for you.
For me, just a big deal being able to produce it, getting to work was very exciting. The sub 100 nanometers for me in my head has more to do with other applications. Okay. Than batteries and everything else. So that's pretty cool. No, it's just that the system works. Like, the reality is, we were looking to do between 100 to 200 nanometers material. We did between 100 and smaller. So that's cool. That brings out another series of events, because, you know, I was joking that if we're doing 200 nanometers, it's 2 COVID. Now we're down to 1 COVID site. Yeah.
When do you think, I'm just thinking out loud what the investors are thinking at home while they're watching this. When do you think you'll be in a position to produce bigger spherical nanopowders and nanowires in order to be able to fulfill that order? Because I'm sure people.
Well, it's usually a question for us to figure out the basically. We figure out the low. Now we got to work on scaling it up bigger, and then once we get the size they want, we'll ship it to them. It's as simple as that. It's just we have to start somewhere. Okay, you can't start in the middle of the size you're trying to do. You got to start with the most difficult one, because Once you figure it out, all the more difficult one, the other one's going to become theoretically easier to do. As I go back, the proof of concept image we showed was 500 nanometers. Okay? So the guy was interested in the material I've done there. But, you know, since we knew that we needed to go smaller, we designed the system to go small. And we exceeded expectation, and now we're going to be moving the other way. So, you know, it's finished. Because if we would have done like 500 nanometers at the beginning, we would have delivered the material to the guy, but we would still have to figure out a way to get it lower. So it's
better to get the better to get the vegetables out of the way first, and then have dessert after.
Yeah, that's the key point.
That's
In the long-term
awesome.
perspective, which you know, for some people, long-term is considered between between morning and noon. But in my long-term perspective, you know, it's the best outcome that we could have reached.
Congratulations, Bernard. That's that's really cool. I want to address the 800-pound elephant in the room, which is why you're wearing a shirt and tie.
Because it was
last couple of times I had ugly Christmas sweaters, and you're a hit. And now you're wearing a shirt and tie. What's going on?
Well, first of all, I wanted to see if I still fit in those freaking things, because since freaking COVID, like it's like tight as everything else. I decided to torture myself. No, actually, this morning was Bose Goldfield AGM, so I thought I would wear a tie, not knowing that according to Zoom etiquette, wearing a tie is very bad. But I still decided to do it. I'm a rebel. Okay, that's what it is. But eventually, you know, I'll be looking back and coming back at some funny shit.
Yeah, because a lot of people,
I want to confuse people.
A lot of people are factoring to their valuation models of HPQ Silicon the spin out of BernardsUglySweaters.com. So we don't want to suddenly, you know, say we're taking a write down on that. Last question for you. Can you give investors a bit of, I'm not asking for timelines, but how does, and I don't want to say how does the rest of the year look, because that's just, you know, the way HPQ is moving. That's almost like to ask you to talk about a decade, but how does the company look like moving forward the next 6 months between now and June? You know, what are the kind of things, and you don't have to give us a bullet point every single thing, but what are some of the big picture things that you want to move along, let's say over the next 6 months, and that investors should kind of be looking forward towards?
Oh, it's going to be a busy 6 months. It's going to be a busy 6 months. Having learned that, you know, for us, timeline and R&D projects are sort of like more guesstimation than an exact science. There's a lot of things I'm working on with Pyro and with other entities that we're keeping under wrap until we come closer to being able to talk about them. That's one of the things. Two, we're entering what I consider the most fun part, which is, you know, R&D testing, back and forth, coming in and out, you know, figuring out, getting results, getting discussion. I'm going to end up having my brain racks up, because I'll probably end up having like freaking Zoom meeting with 17 PhD. The advantage with Zoom now is I can shut off my cameras and fall asleep, because before, when it was in-person meeting, you know, you would see me doze off when we would do those type of discussion. But I get enough to get the gist. It's just like, you know, that's the concept.
Just give me a second here. But you know what, man?
Yeah, but you took a young picture there. It's like
that's a while ago, but
that's a while ago.
It's great to see you having fun though, Bernard. It's like really great. Like I think that really transcends in this interview that this is you know, this is a milestone, as you called it, and congratulations on that. And you know, make sure not to leave us for another 15 whole trading days, right? We want to have you back sooner if we can, but congratulations on this, and can't wait to see what you're going to do next. If you want last word, obviously take it. Is there anything that we missed or something?
I just want to say, you know, like we know what we're doing. We understand where it's going. Are you sure you're recording this? I'm not seeing any button telling me you're recording. Don't tell me I have to do it again.
I'm recording.
Because I don't want to have to do this again. It's like, come on, like I can't come. No, it's like there's a technique to my madness. And I think in this year's proof now, it took me a few years to figure it out, but it is there. And the reality, and the one last point is going to be, this year is going to be so much fun. I think it's the beginning of so much fun year, is that renewable energy, clean tech, those type of things are going to be hot for many, many years. And we're at the forefront of it. And we're light years ahead of everybody else. I know other companies that are talking about, you know, doing combine material with silicone and everything else. But once they start figuring out how do I get the silicone at lab scale, it's so freaking easy. Once you start getting industrial scale, have fun. You're gonna have to come knocking on my door.
And on that note, because you said that, I got to give you a follow on, which is yesterday was a pretty important day. Politics aside, Joe Biden is inaugurated U.S. president. First thing he does is kill the Keystone pipeline. Second thing he does is rejoin the Paris Treaty Accord. So clearly, America is going to lead the green charge in the next 4 years. So from a political point of view and a policy point of view, that should also provide some tailwind to HPQ. As it seems like it's going to accelerate now.
It's just going to accelerate. It's going to attract more eyes to what we're doing. But we've been doing it before. We were doing it when nobody was interested. So it's just more fun that we're having into it. But the reality is, like when we started with solar 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't there. And now the reality, the thinking, and those type of things. So I think it's more than just that. It's in the investment community. It's everything else. There's so much, there's a lot of talk about green stuff. Okay. But there's not too many people doing the walk. We're one of the few companies that's doing the walk. So one of the few companies that if you're really talking about being green, you're going to have to come visit us. That's the simplest way of putting it. Okay. If you're talking green and you're investing in mutual funds that are in oil, forget it. Just go in funds like ours. And eventually there'll be funds looking at, technology companies like us. And that's going to coming in. The beauty of it is we're starting to come up with material results that are game changing. Low cost producing 100 nanometers materials. That's big.
I can't think of a better way to end off, my man. Congratulations. I love the smiles. I love that this year is going to be fun. And most of all, I love the fact that you and PyroGenesis pulled off something pretty good, producing sub 100 nanometer spherical nanopowders and nanowires. I mean, that's fantastic. And can't wait to have you back, my friend. Have a great day.
Thanks.
To everybody at home, you've been watching or you've been listening to my podcast via Spotify, Google, Apple, or your favorite podcast platform. To Bernard Tourillon, Chairman CEO of HPQ, that trades on the venture exchange on the stock symbol HPQ. And for those of you who new and you got to do your due diligence, get to Agoracom, start your due diligence first there. Then from Agoracom, click over to HPQ Silicon. You definitely got to do that to do your due diligence. And remember, for those of you who don't know, HPQ has a CEO verified forum on Agoracom, which means Bernard himself with the check mark, we verified that's him. He's responding. He's engaging to investors. So if you have some questions, good questions, then make sure you get there and ask Bernard, because to us, anytime you have that kind of access and transparency, that alone speaks volumes. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you soon. See you next time.